In the 5th year of marriage, Julius fell madly in love with a female college student. The girl came from a poor family but had a cold and proud demeanor. She refused Julius's black card, saying, "I won't be anyone's caged canary." That one sentence alone drove Julius to obsession. He pursued the college student with such fervor that it became the talk of the town. Forgetting that at home, he still had a wife whom he had once wooed with 99 love letters before finally convincing her to marry him. Giselle never cried or made a scene. Each time he hurt her for the sake of that college girl, she would burn one love letter. When all 99 letters were completely burned, that would be the day she left him for good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. The day the first love letter was burned was when he stood her up on their wedding anniversary, spending the entire day at the milk tea shop where the girl worked part-time, just to wait for her shift to end. The day the 36th love letter was burned was when he abandoned her, burning with a 40-degree fever, on a rainstorm-lashed highway, all because he was in a hurry to comfort the girl who was afraid of thunder. The day the 72nd love letter was burned was when he took down the wedding photo from the living room to make the girl happy, replacing it with a doodle she had casually drawn. The day the 95th love letter was burned was at an auction. Julius accompanied Giselle to bid on her mother's keepsake, the Giselle's mom's favorite sapphire necklace from her lifetime. But as soon as the auction began, he spotted the college girl working there part-time. The girl glanced at the necklace a couple more times. Julius immediately raised the bid to an exorbitant price, won the auction, and then publicly presented the necklace to her. "Since you liked it, I bought it for you," he said in a deep voice. "Do you like it?" The girl, dressed in a waitress uniform, firmly pushed away Julius's hand and said sternly, "Sir, I've told you before, I have no interest in wealthy families and no desire to be your caged bird. No matter what you give me, it won't change my mind. Please take the necklace back and stop interfering with my work." With that, she turned and walked away, carrying the empty wine glass. Julius not only didn't get angry, but instead let out a low chuckle, leaving the crowd behind as he chased after her. Giselle felt a sharp pain in her heart, froze for 2 seconds, then rushed out after them. On the deck where the sea wind howled, Julius was still pestering the girl. Seeing that she truly refused to accept it, he casually tossed that priceless sapphire necklace was nonchalantly thrown into the sea by him. "If you don't like it, I'll pick another one," he said in an impossibly gentle voice. "I'll keep choosing until you're satisfied." With that, he turned and followed the girl without a backward glance, completely unaware. Giselle climbed over the railing and leaped without hesitation into the pitch-black, icy seawater. As seawater flooded her nostrils, Giselle suddenly remembered 5 years ago. He had proposed to her on a cruise ship just like this. He said, "Giselle, in the future, even if you want the stars in the sky, I will pluck them for you." But now, he could casually throw her mother's keepsake into the sea. For an entire night, Giselle struggled to crawl out of the icy seawater. The necklace clenched in her palm gleamed from being soaked in the sea, but her fingers were already stiff from the cold. On her way home, she was scrolling through her social media feed and saw all those rich kids flooding their posts. Mr. Julius has really fallen hard this time, chasing after a waiter and causing such a scandal all over town. Even when he was pursuing his wife back then, it wasn't this sensational, was it? Her finger paused, and her heart felt as if it were tightly constricted by a thin wire. Yes, back when he was pursuing her, he wrote 99 love letters and confessed his feelings 99 times before she finally nodded in agreement. They went from school uniforms to wedding gowns, and even after marriage, their love was as sweet as honey. Everyone said Julius was utterly devoted to her, until the 5th year of their marriage, when he was getting an 4 drip at the hospital and encountered a clumsy intern. She messed up the needle insertion several times, leaving his hand bruised and swollen. Yet he didn't get angry. Instead, he stared at her flustered expression and smiled. Later, he spent lavishly, offering cars, houses, trying to make her his kept woman. But she refused with an air of righteousness, saying, "Mr. Julius, I have no interest in wealthy families. Please behave yourself." In fact, she even went to Giselle and said, "Please keep your husband in check and stop him from harassing me." If it were anyone else, Julius would have already lost his temper. But with her, not only did he not get angry, he pursued her even more relentlessly. Giselle confronted him, but he casually replied, "She's quite interesting. I'm just having some fun. I'll come back when I've had enough." "Giselle, I love you very much, But loving only one person for a lifetime is too difficult. You must allow me moments of wandering. Giselle was heartbroken, yet couldn't bring herself to leave him. So, she took out those 99 love letters, deciding to give him 99 chances. Every time he hurt her, she burned one. The day all the letters were burned would be the day she completely let go of him. At this moment, she lit the lighter and burned the 95th love letter. As the flames devoured the pages, she thought, he only had 4 chances left. After the car arrived at the villa, Giselle had just stepped inside when she saw Julius standing on the stairs, looking down at her. "You're back. I have something to tell you." Giselle nodded and, as she had countless times before, stepped onto the stairs without hesitation. Who would have thought that as soon as she approached him, he suddenly reached out and pushed her hard. Ah! Giselle fell heavily down the stairs, the back of her head hitting the steps. Warm blood flowed from her temple, blurring her vision. Shivering in pain, she looked at Julius in disbelief. He slowly walked down and crouched in front of her, reaching out to wipe the blood from her face. "Giselle, bear with it. She's been looking for a caregiver job recently. Only if you're injured do I have a reason to let her move in." Giselle never expected Julius to go this far for Alexandra, to pursue her. He didn't hesitate to hurt his own wife. In excruciating pain, she was about to speak when darkness enveloped her vision, and she fainted. When she woke again, a sharp pain radiated from the back of her head. Struggling to open her eyes, she saw an unfamiliar ceiling and couldn't tell what day or time it was. "Ms. Hill, you're awake." A cold, clear voice came through. Giselle turned her head and saw Alexandra standing by the bed, holding a medical kit in her hand. She was dressed simply in a white t-shirt and jeans, her hair tied up in a high ponytail, with no makeup on her face, yet exuding a youthful aura. "I'm your caregiver, Alexandra," the girl said calmly, her tone carrying a hint of detachment. "Although I've moved in, please keep Mr. Julius in check. If he crosses the line again, I'll leave immediately." Giselle felt a sharp pain in her chest. How ironic. This young girl had moved into her home, yet expected her, the lady of the house, to keep her husband in check. "I want to change caregivers," Giselle said hoarsely. Alexandra acted as if she hadn't heard and proceeded to prepare the syringe. "Now I'll give you the anti-inflammatory shot." The first needle went in but missed the vein. The second one went off course, instantly causing a small bump on the back of the hand. The third one drew blood outright. "If you can't do it, let someone else try," Giselle said, her voice trembling with pain. Hearing this, Alexandra immediately reddened her eyes and said stubbornly, "What do you mean? If it weren't for my grandmother's critical illness, do you think I'd be willing to come?" As she spoke, she reached out to grab Giselle's hand again, this time the needle tip harshly tearing the skin, blood streaming down the pale wrist. Giselle couldn't bear the pain any longer and pushed her away abruptly. "Enough. Don't touch me." Alexandra staggered backward, knocking over the medicine tray, glass bottles shattering across the floor. At that very moment, the door was flung open. Julius strode in. "What's going on?" His gaze shifted between the two, finally settling on Alexandra, who was sitting on the floor, his expression suddenly changing. "Since you don't welcome me, I'll leave." Alexandra, her eyes red, scrambled to her feet and made a dash for the door. Julius grabbed her arm. "Who said that?" Alexandra struggled to shake off his hand. "Your wife. I was kind enough to give her an injection, and she pushed me. I'm just not skilled yet. Wasn't that clear to you from the start?" Julius immediately looked at Giselle's swollen hand, his eyes clearly flashing with distress. But when he turned to Alexandra, his expression shifted to compromise. "What will it take for you to stay?" he asked meekly. Alexandra lifted her chin. "I hate the condescending attitude of you rich people the most. I want her to apologize to me." "Giselle." Julius turned to Giselle, his tone brooking no argument. "Apologize." Giselle looked at him in disbelief. "She stabbed me like this, and you want me to apologize?" Julius darkened his gaze. "If you refuse, think about your parents' company." Giselle felt a chill run through her. "You're threatening me. For her sake." "Giselle, it's just an apology." Julius frowned impatiently. "It won't cost you a piece of flesh. Do you really want to watch your parents' company go bankrupt?" At that moment, Giselle felt as if pierced by 1,000 arrows. She bit her lower lip so hard that she tasted blood. Seeing Julius's expression grow increasingly cold, and realizing he was serious, she had no choice but to struggle up from the bed. Swallowing her humiliation, she bowed deeply to Alexandra and said, "I'm sorry. Alexandra frowned and said, "Is this how you rich people apologize?" So quietly, Giselle dug her nails deep into her palms, bent down again, and raised her voice. "I'm sorry, are you satisfied now?" Seeing Alexandra reluctantly nod, Julius finally softened his expression and carefully coaxed her to get her wounds treated. The moment the door closed, Giselle could no longer hold herself up and collapsed to the floor. Silently weeping, she pulled out a yellowed love letter from under her pillow and lit it with trembling hands. As the flames consumed the 96th love letter, she remembered how 16-year-old Julius looked when he wrote this letter, under the cherry blossom tree on the university campus. The boy with reddened ears shoved the letter into her hands and said, "Giselle, be with me, won't you? I'll treat you well for the rest of my life." Just as the flames were about to die out, the door suddenly swung open. "What are you burning?" Giselle clutched the charred remnants of the love letter in her palm, the lingering heat of the flames stinging her hand. "Nothing. Just burning some useless things." Julius frowned at the scraps, finding them vaguely familiar. But before he could ponder further, Alexandra's voice came from outside the door. "Mr. Julius, are you going to the party or not? If we don't leave now, I'm not going." Giselle looked up. "What party?" "I wanted to introduce her to our circle." He paused, "but she said she's your caregiver, so she'll only go if you do." "Giselle, just come with me this once." Giselle felt as if a heavy hammer had struck her chest. She smiled bitterly. "Julius, what exactly am I in your eyes?" He seemed stunned for a moment before finally speaking. "Giselle, I've already explained it to you. Before this, I've never encountered a woman so hard to conquer. So I'm very interested in her. You don't need to be jealous. Once I've pursued her and grown tired of her, I'll come back to live a proper life with you." Giselle slowly closed her eyes. The area around her heart seemed to have lost all sensation of pain. In the end, she was still Julius's forced companion to the gathering. In the car, Alexandra suddenly pulled out a few white pills from her bag. "Ms. Hill, these are anti-inflammatory pills. Taking them will help you recover faster." Giselle stared at the pills without reaching out. "Are you sure these are anti-inflammatory pills?" Alexandra changed her expression. "If you don't trust me this much, then I have nothing more to say." "Giselle." Julius frowned and immediately shielded her. "Take your medicine." Under his cold gaze, Giselle felt a wave of exhaustion. She closed her eyes briefly and eventually had no choice but to take the pill, swallowing it with water. In the private room of the club, Julius' brothers had been waiting for a long time. Seeing them enter, the group immediately started teasing. "Mr. Julius has finally decided to bring Miss Alexandra out with him. So this is the Miss Alexandra who has Mr. Julius so captivated. Truly one of a kind." Giselle sat in the corner, watching the same group of people who had once played matchmaker for her and Julius, her heart aching with each passing moment. "Miss Alexandra, Mr. Julius truly adores you," a young nobleman said with a laugh. "Just say the word, and he'd pluck the stars from the sky for you." Alexandra doubted. Really, half convinced. They urged her to give it a try. "Then, give him the most expensive car from your garage." She pointed at one of the brothers. Julius said nothing, just smiled and tossed the keys over. The crowd cheered. She tried a few more times, asking for watches and houses, and he indulged her every time. The atmosphere in the private room instantly reached its peak. "See, Mr. Julius is serious about you. I think you should just give in and agree to be Mr. Julius's canary," Alexandra stubbornly declared. "Impossible. I will never be a canary. If you keep saying this, I'm leaving." Fearing she might actually leave, everyone quickly changed the subject and urged to play games. Every round, they deliberately made Alexandra lose. The dare was either sitting on Julius's lap or holding hands with fingers intertwined. And when Alexandra lost for the 10th time, the penalty was a 3-minute kiss with the opposite sex person to her left. The private room erupted in cheers. Julius just happened to be sitting to Alexandra's left. Her expression froze instantly as she abruptly stood up. "Are you guys doing this on purpose? If this keeps up, I'm quitting. Just playing around. Don't take it so seriously." "Exactly. How could we possibly cheat? Mr. Julius is worth hundreds of billions. Would someone like that really be so childish?" Giselle tightly gripped her wine glass, watching Julius with a faint smile playing at his lips. "Oh, but he absolutely is." In order to create an opportunity to get close to Alexandra, this billionaire actually resorted to such childish tricks with his brother. "The last time I saw him like this was when he was pursuing her. Her heart felt as if it were being slowly sliced by a blunt knife, the pain bleeding her dry. But what made her even more uncomfortable was that her breathing was becoming increasingly difficult. She clutched her chest in agony, only to realize that her arms were already covered in terrifying red rashes, though she didn't know when they had appeared. This was clearly an allergic reaction, but she was usually very careful about what she ate. As she struggled to breathe, Alexandra's allergy medicine flashed through her hazy mind. Amid the crowd's teasing, Alexandra quickly kissed Julius on the cheek, clearly dissatisfied. He suddenly cupped the back of her head. "That's not a real kiss. Let me show you what a real kiss is." The next second, Giselle watched helplessly as their tongues intertwined, his fingers tangling in her long hair, completely unaware that his wife's rash had spread to her neck, her breathing growing increasingly labored. "Julius." Giselle grasped his arm with difficulty. "Take me to the hospital. I'm having an allergic reaction. Stop making a scene." He pushed her away without even turning his head, his other hand still gripping Alexandra's nape. "Please." She tugged at his sleeve again, her voice already hoarse. This time he shook her off directly, pressing Alexandra onto the sofa to deepen the kiss. The kiss grew more forceful, more addictive, more lingering. Just as he was immersed in this game, Giselle's vision began to blur as she staggered and collapsed onto the champagne tower. Amid the sound of shattering glass, Alexandra's scream was finally heard. "She's fainted." When she woke again, Giselle found herself lying in a hospital. Outside the door came Alexandra's sobbing voice. "What should I do? I didn't mean to mix up the anti-inflammatory medicine with sleeping pills. If something really happens, this would be a major medical accident." Then came Julius' gentle reassurance. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. Even if they really want to pursue this, I can sign a letter of understanding as family." Giselle clenched her lips tightly until she tasted blood. After what felt like an eternity, the hospital room door opened. Julius walked in. "What's wrong with me?" she asked tremblingly. "Why did I faint?" "Low blood sugar." When she heard him say these 3 words with her own ears, Giselle heard the sound of her heart shattering violently. She still remembered when they first got married. A socialite deliberately made her drink too much at a party. The next day, Julius made the other company's stock price hit the limit down. When that person knelt before her to apologize, he wrapped his arm around her waist and said, "Giselle, with me here, no one can lay a finger on you." Now she's dying because of Alexandra's mistake. Yet he's still protecting the one to blame. "Julius, oh Julius, how could you hurt me like this?" She trembled in pain, yet Julius didn't notice her distress at all. Seeing that she was unharmed, he couldn't wait to stand up. "Alexandra has been worried sick about you all night. I'll take her home first and come back to stay with you later." But in the following days, Giselle never saw him again. She only saw from social media that Julius had taken Alexandra to the beach, to concerts, to all the places they had once promised to visit but never did. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Julius finally appeared. He stood by the car holding a bouquet of chrysanthemums and handed it to her as she came out. "I've been busy with company matters lately and couldn't accompany you. Today is the anniversary of your mother's passing. I'll go with you." Giselle silently took the flowers, only then noticing Alexandra was also in the car. She got into the back seat without acknowledging her, watching the scenery flash by outside the window, recalling her mother's last words. "Giselle, Mom just hopes you'll find someone who truly loves you." She touched the 3 remaining love letters in her bag, thinking bitterly, "Mom, I think I chose the wrong person." Upon arriving at the cemetery, Giselle hadn't even had time to pay her respects before hearing devastating news. "I'm terribly sorry, Ms. Giselle, but with the frequent rainy season and severe landslides, all the graves in this area need to be relocated." Her fingers tightened around her handbag until her knuckles turned white. Mother had cherished peace and quiet in life. Yet now even in death she couldn't rest undisturbed. Julius had appeared behind her at some point, taking the documents from the staff member and signing his name with a flourish. "Giselle, you go get the ashes first. I'll handle the grave relocation procedures." Giselle nodded and turned to walk up the mountain. The rain had soaked the steps, dragging her weakened body. Each step felt like walking on knife edges. In front of her mother's tombstone, the workers had already dug open the grave. Giselle knelt on the muddy ground, carefully cradling her mother's urn in her hands. It was a simple sandalwood box, engraved with her mother's name, Arabella. "Your aunt must have been very beautiful in her lifetime." Alexandra suddenly spoke up, reaching out to help. "Ms. Hill, let me carry that for you." No need. Giselle sidestepped, holding the urn carefully as she made her way down the hill. But just at that moment, Alexandra suddenly screamed, "Ah, there's a bug." In the panic, she abruptly bumped into Giselle. Giselle, caught off guard, tumbled down the steps. She clutched the urn tightly, her back slamming hard against the stone steps. The pain so intense her vision went black. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." Alexandra hurried down in a fluster. "Let me help you pick it up." As she reached for the urn, Giselle had no time to stop her before seeing Alexandra slip underfoot. Bang! The urn crashed heavily onto the ground, shattering into pieces. Pale gray ashes scattered across the floor, quickly soaked by the rain. "I'm sorry. I'll clean it up right away." Alexandra frantically tried to gather the ashes, only making more of a mess. Under the pouring rain, her mother's ashes gradually dissolved into the soil. Giselle trembled all over, unable to hold back any longer, and slapped her. "That's enough. You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Alexandra covered her face, tears instantly welling up. "I didn't. I just wanted to help. Maybe I was a bit clumsy, but my intentions were good. How dare you hit me? I may be poor, but I won't let you humiliate me like this. You only lost your mother's ashes, but I've lost my dignity." Giselle felt despair surge through her and raised her hand again, only to be forcefully restrained. Julius appeared out of nowhere, gripping her wrist tightly. "Giselle, what are you doing?" Alexandra could no longer hold back and spoke through her tears. "I was just trying to help her carry the urn. I accidentally spilled it, and then she hit me. If you all can't stand me, then I'll just leave." She had barely taken a step when Julius pulled her into his embrace. "Don't go. I'll get justice for you." With that, he turned a cold gaze toward Giselle. "Apologize." Rainwater streamed down Giselle's cheeks, mingling with her tears. She watched as Julius tenderly wiped away Alexandra's tears while angrily demanding her apology. Feeling as if a piece of her heart had been ripped out, she stared at him with trembling lips. "Julius, did you hear clearly? She smashed my mother's ashes. That's still no reason for you to hit her." Julius' voice was colder than the icy rain as he yanked Alexandra's wrist. "Don't be afraid. Since she refuses to apologize and hit you first, you hit her back." Giselle's pupils constricted in shock. Before she could react, she saw Julius' knuckles wrapping around Alexandra's hand, driving it toward her face with thunderous force. Smack! This slap was 10 times harder than the one she had delivered. Giselle staggered backward, the entire world spinning around her. Her lower back slammed against the hard tombstone, her knees crashing heavily onto the stone steps, sharp pain exploding through every limb. But none of this could compare to the pain in her heart, the agony of being torn in two that nearly suffocated her. Julius didn't even glance at her, merely wiping the rain from Alexandra's face with his thumb. "Feel better now?" Only when he heard the girl's tearful, did he finally exhale in relief, taking off his suit jacket to wrap around Alexandra before scooping her up in his arms. As he turned, his leather shoes crushed the scattered ashes on the ground, leaving behind a trail of glaring footprints. Giselle sat in the rain, feeling every inch of her body trembling with pain. With shaking hands, she reached out, trying to gather the ashen powder, but the rain washed it away too quickly, just like her years of love with Julius, slipping through her fingers no matter how hard she tried to hold on. "Mom, it was my fault." Her voice choked with sobs. "I married the wrong man. I shouldn't have married him." After carefully collecting the last remnants of ashes, she finally took out the 97th love letter from her bag and lit it with trembling hands. As the flames devoured the pages, she remembered Julius promising his gravely ill mother that year, "Don't worry, I will protect Giselle with my life, and never let anyone bully her." "Julius, so this is how you protect me, by helping another woman hit me. I regret it. Falling in love with you. I regret it so much." Giselle ran a high fever all night. She dreamed of sinking in the icy seawater, her mother's ashes scattering around her like snowflakes. She tried to grasp those pale gray particles but couldn't hold on to them no matter how hard she tried. "Giselle, Giselle." Someone was calling her. Giselle struggled to open her eyes, only to find herself not in bed, but in a speeding car. The scenery outside the window rushed backward. Julius gripped the steering wheel, his face terrifyingly grim. "Julius." Her voice was hoarse beyond recognition. "Where are you taking me?" Julius didn't look at her, just said coldly, "Alexandra has been kidnapped." Giselle froze for a moment, her muddled mind gradually clearing. "So, they specifically asked for you. Julius finally turned his head to glance at her. It's Mandel. Mandel. The name pierced Giselle's heart like a knife. That madman who had once pestered her relentlessly, only to be driven out of the city by Julius. You want to trade me for Alexandra. Giselle's voice trembled. Julius tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Mandel used to have feelings for you. He wouldn't harm you. Giselle felt as if she had fallen into an icy abyss. She struggled to open the car door, only to find her hands tied beneath the seatbelt. Julius, she screamed, are you insane? Don't you know who Mandel is? Giselle, calm down, Julius said with terrifying composure. Once I return Alexandra, I'll come back to save you immediately. The car stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse. I've brought the person. Julius pushed Giselle forward. Alexandra. Where is she? Mandel snapped his fingers, and two henchmen escorted Alexandra out. Her hair was disheveled, tear stains on her face, and her eyes lit up when she saw Julius. Mr. Julius. Julius immediately released Giselle, quickly stepped forward, and embraced Alexandra. It's okay now. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Giselle stood frozen in place, her entire body cold. She watched as Julius checked Alexandra for injuries, as he gently wiped away her tears, as he didn't even spare a glance in her direction. Julius. She could no longer hold back her scream. Julius finally turned back and said again, don't be afraid. I'll come for you soon. With that, he wrapped his arm around Alexandra and turned to leave, his figure resolute. Giselle wanted to chase after them, but Mandel grabbed her wrist. Long time no see. MS. Giselle. His breath against her ear made her whole body tremble. Mandel pushed her into the car and drove straight to the hotel. The moment the door closed, he shoved her onto the bed. Julius is truly generous. He loosened his tie. To personally deliver such a beauty right to me. Giselle struggled desperately, but he easily overpowered her. He pinned her down, his fingers tracing her cheek. Do you know how long I've been thinking about you? Let me go. Giselle trembled. Don't touch me. Seeing her tremble with fear, Mandel suddenly smiled, brushing his fingers across her face. All right, I'll give you a chance. Call Julius, and if he answers, I'll let you go. Giselle trembled as she dialed Julius's number. But, once, twice, 3 times, over 100 calls, and not a single one was answered. See, Giselle, now in his heart, you're worth nothing. Come with me. I'll make you happy. Mandel sneered as he pressed down, violently tearing at her clothes. Just as he was about to force his way in, Giselle finally snapped out of it, grabbed the vase from the nightstand, and smashed it hard onto Mandel's head. He groaned and collapsed, giving her the chance to escape. In the pouring night rain, Giselle stumbled her way home, drenched to the bone. She still bore the bruises Mandel had left on her. The moment she pushed the door open, she saw Alexandra sobbing in Julius's arms. Did you really abandon your wife's life just for me? Julius wiped away her tears. Yes, in my heart, you are the most important. Alexandra cried even harder. He helplessly cupped her face. Little ancestor, didn't I already rescue you? Why are you still so scared? Who wouldn't be scared after being kidnapped? Julius curved his lips. I have a way to make you stop being afraid. I don't believe it. Shall I try? He smiled. As the words fell, Julius lowered his head and kissed Alexandra, pressing her down onto the sofa. Giselle witnessed the scene firsthand, her chest aching as if it had been brutally torn open. She turned and walked away, the rain instantly drenching her entire body. She didn't know how long she had been running until she stood in front of that familiar old house. This was where she and Julius had grown up together. Their families had been close friends for generations, and they had been childhood sweethearts, living in adjacent villas. Raindrops trickled down her hair as Giselle walked to the old locust tree in the backyard. She still remembered that at the age of 18, she and Julius had buried a time capsule here, promising to dig it up together 10 years later. Giselle, we'll definitely be married in 10 years. The young Julius smiled brightly as he placed a letter into the metal box. I've written a letter to my future self, telling him to love you forever. Giselle knelt on the muddy ground, digging through the soil near the tree roots with her bare hands. Her nails broke and her fingertips bled, but she felt no pain. The metal box had rusted, but the letter inside remained perfectly intact. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the letter, the elegant handwriting of young Julius leaping off the page. To the 28-year-old Julius, if you dare not love Giselle, the 18-year-old me will never forgive you. Remember, she is your life. The rain fell on the letter, blurring the ink. Giselle pressed the letter to her chest, weeping uncontrollably. How she missed the boy who would blush while writing her love letters. The one who vowed to protect her forever. Julius. He broke his promise. He broke his promise. She cried to the air, as if the 18-year-old Julius could hear. She sat under the tree for a long time, until the rain stopped. Only then did she take out the 98th love letter from her bag and set it alight. Giselle. Julius's voice suddenly came from behind. She turned around and saw him stepping out of the car, pulling her into his arms with rare panic in his voice. Why didn't you say anything after escaping from Mandel's grasp? And why aren't you home? Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Giselle leaned into his embrace, catching the lingering scent of Alexandra's perfume on him, and whispered softly, "Do you even care about my life now? How could I not care about you?" Julius tightened his arms around her. "I came to find you as soon as I sent Alexandra back." Giselle wanted to laugh, but couldn't bring herself to. She held up the soaked letter. "Do you remember this? The time capsule we buried when we were 18. Julius frowned. "What time capsule? Did we ever bury something like that?" He glanced at the sky. "All right, let's head back first. The wind is so strong. If you get sick, Alexandra will have to take care of you again." At that moment, Giselle smiled. Smiling and smiling, tears welled up in her eyes. Turns out, what she couldn't forget, he had forgotten. "Giselle, can't you hear? He's long forgotten about it." In the days that followed, Giselle stayed home to recover, watching helplessly as Alexandra's attitude toward Julius gradually softened. The jewelry and handbags he gifted, she began accepting them gladly. When he returned home late at night, she would wait for him in the living room. At times, Giselle could even see Alexandra secretly holding Julius's hand. A week later, the three of them attended a business cocktail party together. Julius had to socialize, and before leaving, he instructed Giselle, "Take good care of Alexandra." The socialites around them whispered among themselves, "Did you see that? He actually asked the wife to look after the mistress. Mr. Julius spoils her beyond all limits. Not just that, the mistress is dressed more luxuriously than the wife. Clearly doted on to the core. But I heard before that Mr. Julius was deeply in love with a Miss Hill. How come now? Loved before, but met someone he loves more now." Sincerity changes in the blink of an eye. Giselle listened silently to all this without a word, until Alexandra seemed bored and impatiently said to Giselle, "I'll look around by myself. Ms. Hill, you don't need to follow me. I won't cause any trouble." With that, before Giselle could respond, she vanished without a trace, champagne in hand. But not even 10 minutes later, Giselle heard a familiar scream from nearby. She rushed over and saw a playboy tightly gripping Alexandra's wrist. "Little bitch, stop acting so high and mighty. In all of City B, there's no woman I can't touch. Bastard, don't touch me." Alexandra struggled with reddened eyes. "Let me tell you, I may be poor, but I still have my dignity. I won't let you humiliate me like this." Giselle was about to step forward when she saw Alexandra pull out an exquisite small knife from her handbag. A cold glint flashed, and blood immediately appeared on the playboy's face. Furious, the playboy raised his hand to strike her. But at that moment, a dark figure rushed over. Julius's fist slammed hard into the man's face. Giselle stood still, watching him like an enraged lion, punching again and again until the other's face was covered in blood. "Mr. Julius," the playboy pleaded with a bloodied face, "our families still have business together." "It's gone now," Julius declared coldly, scanning the crowd. "Remember, from this day forward, anyone who dares to touch Alexandra will have the entire Hill family as their enemy. And he is the consequence." In the dead silence, Julius ordered the half-beaten playboy to be dragged away. As he turned, Giselle instinctively took half a step back. "Giselle," the fury in his eyes hadn't yet subsided. "Is this how you take care of Alexandra?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The chandelier's light was too harsh, stinging her eyes. Watching him carefully shield Alexandra in his arms as they left, she suddenly remembered their wedding year when someone accidentally spilled red wine on her dress. He had flown into a rage just like this. "Back then," he said, "no one else gets to bully my wife. Now he says, my Alexandra, no one else gets to bully her." They were right. Sincerity truly changes in the blink of an eye. After the cocktail party, the three of them headed back together, until a sharp ringtone suddenly shattered the silence. "What? Okay, I'm coming right away." Alexandra hung up the phone and burst into tears instantly. "Mr. Julius, could you please take me to the hospital first?" My grandma. She's critically ill. Julius didn't hesitate and immediately turned the steering wheel sharply to change direction. Amid the screeching sound of tires skidding on the road, Giselle's forehead hit the car window hard. Yet he didn't even glance at her, focusing solely on comforting Alexandra, who was sobbing uncontrollably in the passenger seat. "Don't be afraid," he said, gripping the steering wheel with one hand while tightly clasping Alexandra's trembling fingers with the other. "I'm here." When I rushed to the corridor, the doctor had just come out of the operating room. "The elderly patient is suffering from liver failure. A transplant might buy her some time, but personally, I don't recommend it. She's already advanced in years, and liver donors are hard to come by these days. Do it. The surgery must be done." Alexandra suddenly grabbed the doctor's white coat, her nails nearly digging into the fabric. "Money is no object." Julius had already taken out his phone. "I'll have someone find a liver donor immediately." His back was straight as a pine while making the call, just like when Giselle's father had a sudden heart attack, and he swiftly mobilized the city's best specialists with the same decisiveness. Only now, that decisiveness was given to someone else. The assistant called back promptly. Giselle stood aside, clearly seeing Julius frown. "Who was it?" The voice on the phone hesitated, but finally, the assistant's words came through clearly. "Yes, madam. The match is a perfect fit." Alexandra turned her head sharply to look at Giselle, tears still streaking her face, yet she lunged forward to grab her hand. "Ms. Hill, please. I beg you." Her fingers were icy cold, damp with clammy sweat. Giselle instinctively tried to pull her hand back, but Julius pressed it down firmly. "Giselle, just donate a portion." His voice was soft, gently coaxing. "You won't die." Giselle looked up at him, her entire body terrifyingly cold. She had accepted the fact that in his heart now, she was less important than Alexandra. But now, she couldn't even compare to Alexandra's grandmother. Could she? "I disagree." She abruptly shook off their hands. "I'm not a living organ bank." With that, she turned and walked away. But the next second, a sharp pain suddenly shot through the back of her neck. Julius's hand chop was swift and ruthless. She collapsed before she could even react. In his final moment of consciousness, he scooped her up in his arms and said to the doctor, "Prepare the operating room." When she woke again, a searing pain tore through her abdomen. Giselle trembled as she lifted her hospital gown, revealing spots of blood seeping through the bandaged wound. "You've just had a liver transplant. Don't move around." The nurse pressed down on her, stopping her attempt to sit up. Giselle clenched her lips tightly until she tasted blood. He actually, for the sake of Alexandra's grandmother, he forcibly transplanted her liver. The wound beneath the hospital gown still throbbed faintly, as if someone were twisting a blunt knife through her internal organs. But this pain, how could it compare to even a 10,000th of what's in her heart? Her trembling fingers traced the hideous scar on her abdomen. How ironic. The deepest wound on her body was left by the very person she loved most. In the days that followed, she lay in bed like a wooden puppet, listening to the laughter and joy from the neighboring hospital room. What a blessed old lady, to have such filial granddaughter and grandson-in-law. Mr. Julius is truly devoted, bustling about for his wife's grandmother. Wife. Giselle wanted to laugh, but didn't even have the strength to twitch her lips. She lay in the hospital for a full half-month. Every day in the hallway, Julius's voice could be heard. Alexandra and her grandmother with warm concern. Yet he never once entered her hospital room. On the day of discharge, Giselle was packing her things to leave when she accidentally overheard Alexandra asking Julius in a tearful voice, "Mr. Julius, why do you keep being so kind to me despite my repeated rejections? Even going so far as to transplant your wife's liver to save my grandmother." Giselle stood still, hearing Julius's deep voice. "I've said it many times. It's because I like you and want to be with you. Ancestor, do I have to dig out my whole heart for you to believe me?" After what felt like an eternity, Alexandra seemed to finally make up her mind. I can agree to be with you, but I have one condition." Julius felt a surge of joy and couldn't wait to pull her into his arms. "Speak." His voice was hoarse with emotion. "Whatever conditions you have, I'll agree to them all. I won't be a caged canary." Alexandra enunciated each word deliberately. "I want to be with you openly and honorably, but only after you're divorced." A deathly silence fell. Giselle counted her own heartbeats. 1, 2. On the 17th count, I finally heard Julius's voice. "Okay." Just that one word. A single, weightless word. Giselle slid down the wall and sat on the floor. The wound in her abdomen burned fiercely, but compared to the agony of having a piece of her heart torn out, it was nothing. Back home, Giselle burned the last love letter. As the flames devoured the paper, she remembered Julius as he handed her this letter. The spirited young man stood under her window, snowflakes clinging to his eyelashes, and said, "Giselle, this is the 99th love letter. Be with me, won't you? I'll love you for a lifetime." Now, all 99 love letters have turned to ashes. His entire life was no more than 10 years. The love letters have burned to ashes, and it's time for her to leave. Giselle opened the suitcase and began folding her clothes into it one by one. While packing in the study, Julius's computer was still on. The IG interface hadn't been closed, and messages kept popping up. "Julius, I heard." Alexandra agreed. "But only if you get divorced. Don't tell me you're really planning to leave Giselle." "Julius, you'd better think carefully. Alexandra is just a caged canary after all. While Giselle has been your childhood sweetheart for so many years, and if you really divorce, Giselle would be heartbroken. She won't be easy to console." At Julius. "Julius, what are you thinking? Say something already." Giselle stood still, quietly watching the messages flood the screen. Finally, she saw Julius's reply. "Want both. But now, I want Alexandra more." The group chat fell silent for a few seconds before exploding with messages. "Holy shit, am I seeing this right? What kind of charm does this Alexandra have to make you seriously consider divorce? You better think carefully. Giselle is also quite stubborn. If you bring up divorce, your relationship will probably be over." "No need. I've thought of a way. Julius, draft a divorce agreement and trick Giselle into signing it by saying it's for property transfer. She trusts you so much, she'll sign without even looking. As long as we keep her in the dark, she won't make a fuss or leave. When you get tired of Alexandra, you can just revoke the divorce agreement." The group chat was filled with unanimous approval for this brilliant plan. "Damn, that's awesome. This way Julius can enjoy the blessings of having multiple women." Meanwhile, Julius responded with just 3 words. "Good idea." Giselle slowly closed her laptop, her fingertips icy cold. In his eyes, she didn't even deserve the right to know. Early the next morning, Giselle had just finished breakfast when Julius returned. He was impeccably dressed in a suit and, as expected, held a document in his hand. "Giselle, sign this." His tone was as casual as if discussing the weather. "I'm transferring the villa in the east of the city to you." Giselle quietly looked at the man who had once shielded her from drinking, fought for her, and knelt in the snow to propose. This was the man she had loved for over a decade. "All right." She feigned ignorance as she took the pen and, without even looking, signed her name on the property agreement. Julius visibly relaxed. "I'll be taking Alexandra on a trip during this time, so I won't be coming back." As he turned to leave, Giselle said softly, "Julius." He turned back. "Nothing. Have a pleasant journey." After he left, Giselle headed straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau with the agreement. The staff repeatedly confirmed, "Ms. Giselle, are you sure you want to proceed with the divorce? Once it's done, it cannot be revoked." "Absolutely certain." The moment the official seal was stamped, her heart strangely settled into calm. So this is what it feels like to be completely heartbroken. No pain, no itch, just like removing a necrotic tooth. The airport terminal bustled with people. Giselle clutched her one-way ticket, taking one last glance at her phone. In her social feed, Julius's friend had posted a photo of him and Alexandra at the airport. Caption: "Congrats to Julius for finally winning the beauty's heart." Giselle turned off her phone, discarded the SIM card, and strode confidently toward the boarding gate. Congratulations to her as well, gaining freedom, embracing a new life. The Hill family group president's entertainment news of vacationing with a canary frequently tops Twitter trending lists. Netizens often encounter the couple in various places, quickly turning into first-row spectators who capture and upload their affectionate moments online, sparking widespread discussions. "I thought Mr. Julius was just playing around, but it seems he's genuinely smitten with this canary and spoiling her rotten." Rumor has it Mr. Julius divorced the former Hill madam just to give this canary a proper status. This canary must be quite something. Do you think she'll become the next Hill madam? Or is Mr. Julius just toying with her? This statement immediately piqued the interest of netizens, sparking lively discussions in the comments section. Some said Julius would marry this canary, while others claimed Julius was just toying with her. Everyone held their own opinions, refusing to back down. and eventually even started making bets. Meanwhile, outside the phone screen, Alexandra stared at the various online comments, gradually biting her lip tighter. Although back then Julius had indeed divorced Giselle to gain her approval, Alexandra still felt insecure deep down. She wasn't sure if it was just her imagination, but ever since she gave her consent, Julius suddenly withdrew his passion like a receding tide. If Alexandra used to be the dominant one in this relationship, now she and Julius had switched positions. Now it was her constantly inquiring about his whereabouts to seek him out, only to frequently hit a wall. Although Julius comforted her by saying he had been too busy lately, a woman's intuition is always the most accurate. She always felt that the current Julius was not invested in this relationship. At the beginning, when she and Julius had just made their relationship public, and someone called her a canary, Julius would always throw a punch to shut that person up. Later, he even had the Hill family official website warn everyone, saying she wasn't some canary but his new girlfriend. But now, with so many people online calling her a canary, after all this time, Julius and the Hill family conglomerate haven't reacted at all. Could it be Julius was just toying with her as netizens claimed? But Julius's genuine affection when pursuing her couldn't have been faked. Alexandra grew increasingly flustered the more she thought, her mind becoming hazy, unaware someone had approached. Suddenly, a large hand slipped beneath her thin nightgown from behind, groping freely, while Julius's scattered kisses trailed from her nape toward her face. A soft moan escaped from Alexandra's lips as her petite body instantly went limp, collapsing into the arms of the man behind her. Gazing at the alluring woman in his arms, Julius's eyes churned with uncontrollable emotions. Unable to restrain himself any longer, he cupped the back of her head with one hand and fiercely captured her lips in a kiss. Be gentle. The dimly lit room had only a single wall lamp on, its yellowish glow diffusing through the bedroom, faintly illuminating two tightly entwined figures. Julius pressed the woman firmly beneath him, his movements growing increasingly bold. Just as his hand reached under Alexandra's skirt, the sudden coolness against his palm instantly snapped her out of her dazed state of desire. Alexandra abruptly pushed him away and rolled to the other side of the bed, clutching her body tightly, her ears burning red. And no, not now. We have to wait until after we're married. Alexandra had been taught by her grandmother since childhood that chastity was a woman's best dowry, something that must be preserved until the wedding night. Moreover, Julius's current attitude toward her made it impossible for her to fully give him her heart, so she had to wait until they were married, until she had completely become his wife. Julius looked at his empty hand and the shy woman at the other end of the bed, his eyes darkening slightly. Then, adopting an apologetic expression, he pulled Alexandra back into his embrace and gently kissed her hair. Sorry for my oversight. It's all right. I respect your thoughts. Alexandra finally raised her head from his embrace, only to immediately fall into his deep, affectionate gaze, causing her originally resolute heart to waver slightly. Julius, thank you. Julius's respectful behavior made Alexandra's earlier unease from seeing the online comments instantly vanish. However, those comments still had an impact on her, so she clenched her hand and decided to tell Julius about the remarks she had seen online. Alexandra had originally intended to ask if he was serious about her or just playing around, but Julius clearly misunderstood Alexandra's intentions. Are they calling you a gold digger again? Don't worry, I'll have those comments removed immediately, so you won't see them anymore. As he spoke, Julius picked up his phone and made a call to his assistant. In less than 3 minutes, the internet was instantly scrubbed clean. Alexandra watched his efficiency with both gratitude and mixed emotions. To say Julius loved her, he had dodged her question. To say he didn't cherish her, he had swiftly ordered the comments to be removed. Alexandra lowered her eyes, veiling the dim light within them. Julius, what exactly are your feelings for me? That night, Alexandra tossed and turned, unable to sleep because of this matter. To her surprise, Julius, who was always punctual with his routine, finally lost sleep as well. She blinked at the person beside her who was also awake and softly called his name. Julius. The man turned sideways and pulled her into his embrace, his voice slightly hoarse. What's wrong? Can't sleep. Alexandra shook her head. No. Why aren't you asleep yet? Julius stiffened slightly, his deep voice laced with a hint of teasing. Darling, you've stirred my desire without putting it out. How do you expect me to sleep? As he spoke, Julius gently traced his fingers along her back, then slowly slid them downward, instantly making Alexandra feel a tingling electric current reverberating through her body. Her face flushed crimson in an instant, and she quickly pushed him away before turning to hide under the covers. I am going to sleep. You can go. Take care of your own fire. She then heard a few indulgent chuckles behind her, causing her cheeks to burn even hotter as she buried her head completely beneath the blankets. Julius didn't look at her again, then picked up his phone from the nightstand and walked toward the bathroom. With one hand, he turned on the shower, and with the other, he opened his phone and clicked into the chat between him and Giselle. It remained completely blank. Julius's messages had all gone unanswered. His brows slightly furrowed as an inexplicable irritation welled up in his heart. He and Giselle had been married for 5 years, so he knew her quite well. Given Giselle's personality and how much she loved him, she would surely lose patience and come to him first. If Giselle came to him, he could also tell her the whole truth, asking her to endure a little longer until he grew tired of Alexandra. Then they could withdraw the divorce agreement together. But reality slapped him hard in the face. Giselle not only didn't reach out to him proactively, but even left his messages unread. Julius frowned slightly before dialing Giselle's number again. He had intended to confront her properly about what she meant, but the call went unanswered as well. Could it be that she was truly too heartbroken over the divorce to answer his calls? Julius thought this way, and his previously gloomy mood instantly lifted, an inadvertent smile curling at the corners of his mouth. In that case, he would just have to coax her properly when the time came. After all, she loved him so much. How could she possibly bear to let someone else have him? For this reason, in the following days, Julius once again temporarily devoted all his attention to Alexandra. Originally, Alexandra had little sense of security in her heart, but seeing Julius suddenly become affectionate toward her again, he even kept her by his side at all times, unwilling to be separated from her for even a moment. This made Alexandra believe for a time that their relationship had rekindled, and her entire being became lightheaded from the sudden surge of immense happiness. So when Julius proposed to her, she vaguely agreed. I do, Alexandra. The moment these 3 syllables were spoken, fireworks burst in midair. Under a shower of confetti and amidst the cheers of the crowd, Julius slipped a 10-carat diamond wedding ring onto Alexandra's finger, then rose excitedly to embrace and kiss her. Congratulations. Congratulations. Cheers to Mr. Julius for winning the heart of such a beauty. May you share a long and happy life together, growing old side by side. Congratulations. Congratulations. The kiss lasted a long time until Alexandra was nearly out of breath. Julius finally released her. He wiped her lips with his thumb, his hoarse voice trembling slightly. Alexandra, I'm so happy you agreed to marry me. Alexandra also had reddened eyes from crying, throwing herself into his arms and tightly hugging his waist. Her voice choked with sobs. I am too. Thank heavens for making her so fortunate to have met someone who loves her so much. Alexandra grew up in a very unhappy family, so from a young age she held no hope for love, let alone believed that good fortune would fall from the sky. Later, when she started her internship at the hospital, she witnessed even more unbearable stories of love, especially when her close friend was seduced by a wealthy businessman and ultimately had a miscarriage before being pushed off the rooftop by his wife. Her friend's last words to her were to remember that there isn't a single good man in this world, and that if she ever decided to be with a man, he didn't need to be rich but must love her wholeheartedly. So when Julius fell in love with her at first sight in the hospital and lavishly spent money to make her his kept woman, Alexandra was utterly resistant, especially since he was already married. Having stepped on 2 of her own landmines in a row, Alexandra swore she would never fall for such a man. After all, such a man must only be playing around with her and couldn't possibly truly love her. So no matter how well Julius treated her or how much money he spent on her, Alexandra remained unmoved. She even went so far as to confront Julius's wife, telling Giselle to keep Julius in check. The more she resisted, the more he refused to give up. Over time, under his persistent pursuit, Alexandra finally opened her locked heart to him. But she had principles and absolutely refused to be the other woman. That's why she told Julius that if he wanted her to agree, he had to divorce Giselle first. Julius acted swiftly. The next day, a divorce agreement bearing both their names was stamped and delivered to Alexandra. It was at this moment that Alexandra finally believed Julius truly loved her. And today, his surprise marriage proposal only strengthened her conviction that she had met the right person. This could be said to be the luckiest thing that had happened to her in over 20 years. At this moment, Celebratory fireworks for the successful proposal were set off outside the castle. Surrounded by the crowd, Julius held Alexandra's hand as they stepped onto the balcony. Alexandra looked up into the sky and saw brilliant fireworks bloomed in the dark night, then fluttered down like petals, as if fairies were dancing across the night sky, so beautiful that Alexandra forgot to breathe. This was the fireworks he sent for her, meant only for her. In an instant, Alexandra felt like the most excited person in the world. Without thinking, she suddenly turned around, stood on her tiptoes, and kissed Julius on the lips. "Julius, thank you for loving me so much." Julius's eyes flashed with surprise. Then he raised his hand to hold the back of her head and kissed her back fiercely. Julius, after the successful proposal, began preparing for their wedding. Upon hearing Julius was getting married, all the brothers were utterly shocked and started sending messages one after another in the group chat. "Holy shit. Julius, are you out of your mind? You're really marrying a canary. What about your wife over there? How much longer are you planning to play around?" Julius let out a cold snort, his slender fingers typing unhurriedly on the phone keyboard as he replied, "What are you all panicking about? It's just a fake wedding. If she hadn't insisted on saving her first time for the wedding night, I wouldn't have married her in the first place. Besides, the divorce agreement between me and your so-called sister-in-law is still stuck at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Without my consent, even if the cooling-off period ends, we still can't get divorced. As for how long I'll keep playing around, I'll decide when I get tired of her." After a moment of silence in the group chat, everyone started typing exclamations like, "Still, my Julius is the best." Julius was in an exceptionally good mood, which made Alexandra next to him curiously lean over to take a look. "Julius, what are you looking at that's making you smile so happily?" Julius discreetly switched the chat interface to a bridal shops page before wrapping his arms around Alexandra and planting a fierce kiss on her lips. "I'm looking at the wedding dress you'll be trying on later. What should I do? The thought of you wearing it soon makes me lose control. I want you right now." His gaze burned intensely as his fingers gently kneaded her wrist, each movement sending ripples of desire coursing through her body. Alexandra's cheeks flushed a rosy hue as she nestled softly against him, burying her face in the crook of his neck. "The wedding is the day after tomorrow. Just hold on a little longer." To give Alexandra an unforgettable wedding, Julius spared no expense or effort, even with the wedding staff working around the clock to speed up preparations. The earliest the ceremony could be held was still the day after tomorrow. Alexandra hadn't minded at first, but now, stirred by Julius's teasing, she too grew restless with anticipation. She also really wanted to marry him as soon as possible. Soon, the car came to a steady stop outside the bridal shop, where the manager and staff were already waiting at the door. As soon as the couple got out of the car, everyone gathered around, warmly ushering them into the shop to try on wedding dresses. For the entire day, Alexandra did nothing else but try on wedding dresses in the shop. After each set, Julius would say she looked beautiful and kiss her passionately, not letting go until he'd had his fill. By the end, Alexandra not only had over 20 wedding dresses to her name, but her lips were swollen and her collarbone was covered in dense clusters of love bites. When leaving the bridal shop, Alexandra was too embarrassed to lift her head and had to be Julius carried out. After days and nights of anticipation, their wedding day finally arrived. The entire wedding was solemn and lively, with countless people raising their glasses to toast Julius and Alexandra as they became husband and wife. Amidst wave after wave of toasts, the couple was thoroughly drunk before they were finally allowed to retreat to their bridal chamber. While Julius went to take a shower, Alexandra stumbled onto the balcony after kicking off her high heels. She hoped the evening breeze would clear her head, so she wouldn't miss out on her own wedding night later. She stood at the edge of the terrace, gazing at the night view beneath the towering buildings, the evening breeze lifting strands of her hair. When Julius stepped out of the bathroom, this was the scene that immediately caught his eye. The woman wore a red backless dress that clung tightly to her body, accentuating her alluring figure, causing Julius to feel a sudden tightness in his lower abdomen. He approached silently, stopping behind her, and raised his hand to gently brush away the stray hairs by her cheek. Alexandra was momentarily stunned before turning her head. Her drunken gaze shimmered with a hint of playful reproach. He chuckled softly, his large hand resting on her waist, slowly caressing as his deep, mesmerizing voice murmured, "What are you looking at?" She let out a light hum but leaned closer to him, cooing, "Nothing, just waiting for you." At these words, Julius darkened his eyes, tightening his grip on her waist. So impatient, I'll give it to you right now." With that, he swept her up in his arms and strode toward the bedroom, then tossed her onto the bed, pressing down upon her. This was Alexandra's first time. Nervous, she clung tightly to her clothes until Julius coaxed her for a long while, finally helping her relax completely and open up. The dim light cast shadows of two entwined figures, the man's muffled groans mingling with the woman's soft moans, only ceasing late into the night. Compared to Giselle's shyness and restraint, Alexandra was far bolder in bed, a stark contrast to her demeanor outside. This made Julius like her even more, and for several days in a row, neither of them left the apartment. Traces of their lovemaking were left on the sofa, in the kitchen, in the bathroom, and even on the balcony. It wasn't until a week later that a phone call finally pulled Julius away from Alexandra's body. After hanging up the phone, Julius kissed the woman covered in hickeys on the bed a few times before finally getting up to leave. Alexandra had grown accustomed to his constant lovemaking, even becoming somewhat addicted to it. His sudden departure left her reluctant to let go. She propped up her delicate, boneless body against the man's back, clinging to him and coquettishly pleading, "Don't go." Okay. Days of lovemaking had left Alexandra's voice slightly hoarse, and the coquettish tone that fell upon Julius's ears now sounded somewhat grating. Ever since Alexandra came into his possession, Julius's interest in her had significantly waned. Especially her unrestrained demeanor in bed made him feel she was no different from the other brothers' canaries. If not for the lingering interest he still had in Alexandra's body, he would have likely discarded her by the second day of their marriage. Thinking of this, Julius felt a growing irritation in his heart. He ignored the woman behind him, simply taking out a cigarette case and lighter from the drawer. Click. After a faint sound, smoke curled from Julius's fingertips, eventually spreading like an invisible hand trying to push away the woman clinging to him. Alexandra bit her lip, but in the end chose to let go and return to the bed. After spending half a month together, Alexandra also gained a deeper understanding of Julius. He loved her dearly, but his love came with conditions. For example, once he made a decision, no one was allowed to question it, including her. The last time she crossed the line, Julius didn't come home for several days. In the end, she had to swallow her pride and put on seductive lingerie to win him back. That was the moment she truly understood how much she loved him, and how terrified she was of losing him. So she never dared to oppose any of his decisions again. After finishing a cigarette, Julius stubbed it out in the ashtray before turning to pinch her cheek with his smoke-scented hand. "Be good and stay at home. I'll come back to keep you company once I'm done." With that, he stood up and walked toward the door without hesitation or the slightest hint of reluctance. As she watched the door close tightly again, Alexandra's eyes dimmed instantly. As the two stayed married longer, she increasingly felt less like Julius' wife and more like a caged canary he kept outside. She was clearly his wife, yet he never took her to any banquets, never introduced her to his parents, and wouldn't even let her leave the house. Every time she questioned him, he would dismiss it with the excuse that he loved her too much and didn't want others to covet her if she went out. At first, Alexandra naively believed him, but gradually she began to see through it. Julius has a really strange attitude toward himself. Her hand hanging by her side gradually clenched into a fist. She must find an opportunity to confront him and get to the bottom of this. At a bar elsewhere, the crowd erupted in teasing as soon as Julius finally made his appearance. "Not easy. Not easy at all. Julius, you've finally deigned to emerge from the arms of your beauty." "Exactly. Exactly. Julius, you're willing to abandon us brothers for a woman. You must be punished with 3 drinks. How does the canary taste? If Julius, you ever get tired of her, could you pass her to me? I've never tried the flavor of such a cold and stubborn little nurse." The group joked around cheerfully. In the past, Julius would have told them to scram, but now he just toyed with his glass and lazily spoke up. "No need to wait. I can give her to you in a few days." Upon hearing this, the group was stunned for a moment before exclaiming in surprise, "Did I hear that right? Julius, what did you say? You're willing to give up the canary? Holy shit. You're already tired of her. You're willing to let her go. Aren't you afraid she'll be heartbroken?" The dim light cast shadows across Julius's face, making his expression unreadable, leaving only the playful smile curling at the corners of his lips visible. "Of course, I've long grown tired of her. Just a canary in a gilded cage. What does it matter whether she passes or not? If you want her, take her by all means." From the very beginning, Julius had seen Alexandra as nothing more than a caged songbird. Besides, the cooling-off period for his divorce with Giselle is about to end. and it's time for him to settle down and return to family life, living well with her. He knew his actions these past days had hurt her deeply. Otherwise, why would she have refused to contact him for so long? Once they remarried, he would make it up to her properly. With this thought, he downed the glass of wine in one gulp. Seeing his magnanimity, the crowd erupted in cheers and playful jeers. "Thank you, Julius. Come on, come on. Let's drink, let's drink." In the apartment, the exquisite dishes on the dining table had long gone cold, and the delicious cream cakes had completely melted, turning into winding snakes that slithered to Alexandra's feet. But she seemed numb, just staring fixedly at the 99 missed calls on her phone screen. Ever since Julius left the apartment last time, she hadn't seen him return. At first, he would still reply to her texts, saying he was busy and telling her to behave. But later, he wouldn't even bother replying to her messages. This was undoubtedly a sign of marital breakdown. Just like before her parents' divorce, her father would stay away from home day and night, ignoring her mother's calls and messages. Alexandra refused to follow in her parents' footsteps, nor did she want to believe their marriage was ending before it even began. She couldn't bear to accept Julius didn't love her. He had already taken her whole heart with his overwhelming love. If one day he truly stopped loving her and abandoned her, she would surely lose her mind. That's why Alexandra kept telling herself, Julius was just too busy. Until today, Julius's birthday. She got up early to prepare everything, and only after everything was ready did she call him, hoping he would come back. But Julius didn't answer a single call. Alexandra bit her lip and started flipping through her contacts, only to sadly realize she didn't even have the contact information of any of his brothers, and she had no idea where to find him. Finally, one of her friends sent her a message saying they had seen Julius at a bar. Alexandra was overjoyed and repeatedly thanked her friend, rushing to the bar without even changing her clothes, to gather the medical expenses for her grandmother. Alexandra had done all kinds of dirty and exhausting jobs, and she was especially familiar with bars. Soon she found Julius's private room and spotted him at a glance. The man sat on a single sofa, his legs casually crossed. A waiter handed him a cigarette and a lighter. After leisurely lighting the cigarette, he narrowed his eyes slightly. His slender fingers held the cigarette as he took a light puff, the white smoke slowly rising and blurring his expression. His movements were indescribably captivating. This also made Alexandra weak in the knees. Just as she was about to push the door open, the man beside her suddenly spoke to Julius. "Julius, didn't you say last time you'd give the canary to me? So, what do you think?" As he spoke excitedly, the man even rubbed his fingers together in anticipation. Julius casually stubbed out the cigarette in his hand. "If you want her, go find her yourself. Why ask me? But are you really willing to part with it?" The man seemed unable to believe such good fortune could befall him and repeatedly sought confirmation. "Humph." Julius let out a mocking laugh. "Why wouldn't I be willing? I've said it before, whether in the past or now. She's just a canary. Besides, the cooling-off period for the divorce between me and your sister-in-law is almost over. I need to hurry and withdraw it to bring her back. What would I keep her for? If you want her, take her away quickly and don't let me see her again." Upon receiving the assurance, the man was overjoyed and repeatedly thanked him while toasting. Julius casually picked up his glass and clinked it with his. Bang! The faint clink of glasses was like a sharp dagger that completely severed Alexandra's last thread of composure. She could no longer support her body and suddenly fell to her knees. Her hands had long been pierced by her own nails, and drops of blood trickled down the edges of her arms. Soon, glistening tears also mixed with the blood droplets, splattering onto the ground and scattering in all directions. It was as if her already shattered heart was suddenly crushed, breaking into countless pieces. A canary. Was that referring to her? But back then, when she agreed with him not to be a canary or a mistress, he had nodded and even shown her the divorce agreement between him and Giselle. Now he blatantly told her that she had been the other woman all along. He hadn't even divorced Giselle. Even Alexandra, as naive as she was, realized she'd been deceived by him. His love for her was a lie. His promise of not making her the other woman was a lie. Now their marriage is also fake. Alexandra opened her mouth, wanting to scream, wanting to cry, but the emotions of grief and despair only produced a whimper like that of a kitten when they reached her lips. Why? Why did he have to deceive her like this? He. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Alexandra threw her head back and laughed, but her voice was filled with madness, sorrow, and despair. She had always believed she was the happiest person in the world. Only then could she receive the endless favor of heaven's chosen one. Julius would rush into a fire without hesitation to retrieve the bracelet her grandmother gave her, and even trade his own life for her safety. He could also decisively divorce his wife of 5 years for her, and respected her wishes by not touching her before marriage. When she didn't want children yet, he didn't make her take pills. Instead, he got a vasectomy. Yet, despite loving her so deeply, in the end, he still treated her like a caged canary and turned her into the other woman. Ah, at last, a complete sob burst from the depths of her throat, as grief, despair, and anger, like the rising tide, tightly enveloped her, dragging her bit by bit into the abyss, leaving her with no strength to struggle. Just when Alexandra thought she was going to die, the door of the compartment was suddenly opened from the inside. In an instant, the tear-stained, grief-stricken Alexandra found herself locking eyes with the cold, indifferent Julius. Though it was just a glance, Alexandra felt as if an entire century had passed. She naively believed that even if he treated her like a caged canary, they had spent so much time together, loved each other for so long, that upon her discovering the truth, he would at least show some panic or guilt on his face. But she was destined to be disappointed. There was nothing on his face. Why? Choking back sobs, she spoke, her eyes filled with utter despair as she looked at him. How she wished this was just a cruel joke he was playing on her, or that all of this was merely a nightmare from which she could wake. As long as she wakes up, he is still by her side, loving her as always. But Julius mercilessly crushed her hopes bit by bit. Because I've never met a woman as difficult to conquer as you, and I was curious about what it would be like to conquer you. Now it seems, it's nothing special. Suddenly, Alexandra felt a strange, sharp pain in her chest, as if someone had plunged a knife deep into her heart with such force that it sent blood splattering in its wake. Julius looked down at the woman kneeling on the ground, his cold, profound black eyes now like frozen ice, piercing and frigid, with a hint of barely perceptible impatience lurking in their depths. Now that you know, you may leave. Considering you've served me well these past days, I'll give you the apartment and another 10 million. Just make sure you never appear before me again. Alexandra cried even harder after hearing his words. I don't want any of this. I've never been that kind of person. I only want you. Why do you love me so much? Why do you treat me like this? Love. Julius laughed out loud. Alexandra, I was just playing with you. How can you be so narcissistic to think that was love? And from beginning to end, I've only ever loved Giselle. Those few short words struck like the most vicious slap across Alexandra's face. Her complexion turned deathly pale in an instant, as if she had lost her soul. Utterly speechless, she could hear nothing, see nothing. Her world had completely collapsed in that moment. Julius had no patience to tangle with her here. He had more important matters to attend to. He then took the prepared check from his assistant beside him and tossed it in front of her. Let's end it here. If you come bothering me again, think about your grandmother in the hospital. With that, Julius left without a moment's hesitation, striding away into the distance, letting the darkness engulf Alexandra completely. Boom! A crack split the sky as torrential rain poured down like a waterfall, pounding the road and splashing water everywhere. A black Maybach sped through the rain like a lone boat on the ocean. Inside the car, Julius stared at his phone, which once again showed an unanswered call. His brows furrowed tightly. Today was the day the cooling-off period for his divorce with Giselle ended. Originally, he was supposed to go with her to withdraw the divorce agreement, but the staff at the Civil Affairs Bureau told him that Giselle had not shown up, and Julius couldn't get through to Giselle on the phone either. If Giselle hadn't answered the phone a few times before, Julius could still make excuses for her, but today was their divorce day. No matter how angry she was, she would have come. Now that she absolutely refused to show up, did it mean she didn't want to divorce him after all? Instantly, Julius's originally dull eyes suddenly lit up again. Yes, that must be it. Giselle loves him so much. How could she possibly divorce him? In that case, he can just go alone to withdraw it, and it'll be a nice surprise for her later. Thinking of this, Julius hurriedly urged the driver in the front seat. Drive faster. Yes, sir. Soon after a sudden brake, the Maybach came to a stop right in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Julius strode toward the bureau without even opening an umbrella. Hello. I'm here to withdraw the divorce agreement between me and Giselle. Julius looked at the staff member before him, his voice filled with urgency. If he were any later, he and Giselle would be officially divorced. Okay, please wait a moment. With that, The staff quickly started typing on the keyboard to look up the information on the computer. But soon the staff looked up at him again. Sorry, Mr. Julius, you cannot revoke the divorce agreement. Julius stiffened. What did you say? He quickly raised his hand to glance at his wristwatch. Isn't the time still not up yet? Why can't it be cancelled? The staff member hurriedly explained to him. Because the system shows that you and Giselle have already divorced. And your divorce certificate has already been processed. Julius's mind went blank instantly. When did we process the divorce certificate? He clearly remembered that after signing the divorce agreement, there would be a 1-month cooling-off period, during which either party could revoke the agreement at any time if they had second thoughts. Moreover, when he initially submitted the divorce agreement to the Civil Affairs Bureau, he had even applied for a special procedure. As long as he didn't give his approval, even if the cooling-off period expired, he and Giselle would not be able to get divorced. But now, the staff was telling him that not only had the divorce agreement been approved, but the divorce certificate had already been issued. He abruptly stood up from his chair, his voice barely containing his anger. Didn't I say it before? No one is allowed to pass without my permission. What on earth are you doing? The staff member also looked troubled. Mr. Julius, we really don't know either. Enough. Call your supervisor over here. Soon. The supervisor from the Civil Affairs Bureau hurried over. After learning the details, he repeatedly explained to Julius. Mr. Julius, shortly after you submitted the divorce agreement, Miss Lynn arrived and also used her privilege to have us immediately approve and process your divorce certificate. After speaking, the supervisor pulled up the original video on the computer, showing Giselle in a long dress calmly entering the Civil Affairs office. After saying something to the staff, they promptly stamped the divorce agreement and quickly handed one of the divorce certificates to Giselle. Then Giselle disappeared from the surveillance footage again. The 1-minute-plus video was replayed several times by Julius. No matter how he looked at it, the woman in the video was Giselle, so she had known all along that he lied to her, which was why she came to get the divorce certificate in advance. Julius closed his eyes, struggling to suppress the anger in his heart. Then why didn't you tell me? If they had told him, he wouldn't have let Giselle come to the Civil Affairs Bureau, much less let her get the divorce certificate. We did call you at the time, but your phone was turned off. By the end, the leader's voice grew softer and softer, while Julius's face suddenly turned deathly pale. He couldn't help but take a step back. He remembered that day when he tricked Giselle into signing the divorce papers and showed them to Alexandra. Afterwards, Alexandra initiated a kiss with him. The woman he had pursued for so long finally had her heart opened by Julius. To capitalize on this victory, after submitting the divorce papers to the Civil Affairs Bureau, he immediately took Alexandra on a flight to the Maldives. To focus entirely on accompanying his canary, he turned off his phone directly. Little did he know that this simple act of shutting it off would lead to such a colossal mistake. Bang! Suddenly, Julius slammed his fist against the wall, causing blood to instantly splatter and stain the pristine white wall crimson. At that moment, the staff member who had been sent by the supervisor to retrieve the divorce certificate rushed over and handed it to the supervisor. Mr. Julius, here is your divorce certificate. Please keep it safe, as it will be necessary if you ever wish to remarry in the future. Julius paused for a moment before turning to look at the divorce certificate in the supervisor's hand. After a long while, he slowly reached out to take it. The moment his fingertips touched the divorce certificate, it felt like being scalded by a piece of quenched steel. He jerked his hand back abruptly, the paper fluttering in midair like a raging fire burning charred holes into his vision. He heard the sound of his Adam's apple bobbing, a metallic tang of rust rising in his parched throat. The color of the divorce certificate was oddly unsettling. Not the festive vermilion red he remembered from their marriage certificate, but more like the dark bruise of blood seeping beneath skin. Just looking at it made him inexplicably uncomfortable, even causing a dull ache in his heart. His hand, suspended in midair, opened and clenched before finally accepting the divorce certificate between him and Giselle. Julius unconsciously rubbed his fingers over the embossed seal on the paper, the coarse texture unique to the civil registry's standardized forms scraping painfully against his fingertips. He suddenly remembered the day they got their marriage license 5 years ago. Giselle's ring finger had left a faint pink mark from the pressure of the ring. Now, his own knuckle curled in the same arc, pinching a pale crescent into the edge of the document. Back when they registered their marriage, their heads had been so close together, their smiles so sweet. But now, the photo on the divorce certificate showed only his lonely figure, staring blankly at the camera. Looking utterly wretched, Julius took a deep breath, tucked away the divorce certificate, and turned to rush home. He was divorced without his knowledge, and he refuses to accept this outcome. Never will. So, he intends to find Giselle and remarry her. He couldn't believe she would be so heartless as to divorce him. In the rainy night, the black Maybach sped through the downpour, running several red lights in a row. What should have been a 40-minute journey was cut in half by Julius. He didn't even have time to park the car properly before rushing towards the villa. That was their former marital home, and also Giselle's only home in the country. After all, Giselle's family had long since moved to the United States, while Giselle's career was entirely based in the country. For her convenience, Julius had transferred the ownership of this villa to Giselle after their divorce. He strode up the steps and pushed the door open, but what greeted him wasn't the warm glow of lights and the woman on the sofa, but complete darkness and the dust particles floating in the faint light seeping in from outside. Julius suddenly froze, then stepped inside. Snap! The moment Julius turned on the light, the entire room's appearance fell into his eyes. He saw that all the wedding photos that had once densely covered the walls were gone, replaced by a wall full of black holes. He also saw that the small trinkets Giselle loved and the frequently used furniture had all vanished without a trace. The entire house was eerily empty, as if telling him, no one had been home for a long time. Giselle. Julius's call collided with the bare walls of the living room, shattering into countless echoes. He walked through the living room and headed upstairs. The bedroom was just as empty, the clothes he had gifted still hanging untouched in the wardrobe. The cuff of the rightmost piece still bore the lipstick stain from the spring festival, now resembling a dried, brown tear mark. Another sunrise. Julius sat on the dust-covered sofa, his phone constantly flashing with messages from his assistant. Each message carried the same line: no trace of Madame has been found. Ever since Julius learned that Giselle had divorced him and left, he had gone mad, deploying the entire Hill family and leveraging every connection to scour the capital for Giselle's whereabouts. Yet, whether it was Giselle's usual haunts or unlikely spots, train stations, airports, or highway checkpoints, there was no sign of her. In the end, he even turned to his former archenemy. But upon learning of Giselle's disappearance, the rival only mocked him. The rival even told him that on the day he traded Giselle for Alexandra, the rival had given Giselle one chance. If she could get through to Julius's phone, he would let Giselle leave. But in the end, Giselle jumped off the building to escape without ever reaching Julius on the phone. Julius only then realized how much harm he had caused Giselle by abandoning her that day. He went berserk, beating his archenemy to a pulp, and when both were severely wounded, the rival spat out a mouthful of blood. Julius, you didn't care whether she lived or died back then. Now you want to find her. Do you really think she'd let you? I suggest you give up this hopeless idea, and that canary of yours. I advise Mr. Julius to investigate her properly. At this thought, Julius felt the wound at the corner of his mouth throb faintly again. Speaking of Alexandra, originally after Julius gave her a check to sever ties, he hadn't paid any attention to her since, but because of his rival's words, he still went to investigate, only to discover Alexandra was unbelievably foolish. During her internship at the hospital, her clumsiness caused several serious medical accidents. She even mixed up Hill's medication. It was only because Hill was kind-hearted that he didn't hold her accountable. Later, after coming to the villa, she often tried to help but only made things worse. Not only did she spill Giselle's mom's ashes, but during the kidnapping, she even reminded the enemy to take Giselle as a hostage instead. All because she said, I'm just Hill family's caregiver. Why kidnap me? Go kidnap his wife instead. At this point, Julius could no longer hold back. These past few days, Alexandra had been frequently bothering him about grandma affairs. He had only allowed his subordinates to assist her out of consideration for her past role as his canary. Now, it seemed this assistance was no longer necessary. So he made a call to his assistant, instructing him to withdraw all support for the Alexandra's family and let them fend for themselves. This was his final act of mercy toward Alexandra. He hung up the phone and looked at the gradually rising sun outside, his heart still sinking to the bottom. A week had passed. Julius's men still hadn't found Giselle. The whole world was only so big. He had searched everywhere, both domestically and abroad, but still couldn't find her. He originally wanted to ask Giselle's family, but then he thought of Giselle's dad having remarried someone else. With Giselle's temperament, it was impossible for her to go back. So Julius dismissed the idea again. But where else could she possibly go? Step up the search efforts immediately. If we still can't find her, issue a missing person notice. Overnight, Giselle's disappearance spread like wildfire through the streets. Yet no one could locate her, because Giselle was right within Giselle's family. From the moment Giselle returned to Giselle's family sealed off all information. Julius knew that Giselle's dad had remarried. But what he didn't know was that Giselle's dad had divorced his new wife. That's why Giselle was willing to return to Giselle's family and start taking over Giselle's family's business. Giselle's dad, after his daughter returned, moved alone to the old house to avoid upsetting her. So the vast Giselle's family residence was occupied only by Giselle. In the early morning, Giselle came down the stairs, and the servant turned on the TV to the news channel while setting breakfast in front of her. Giselle waved her hand to dismiss the servant before sitting cross-legged on the carpet and eating breakfast from the low table in front of her. As she lowered her head to take a sip of milk, she casually glanced at the news and suddenly caught sight of Julius's missing person notice. With just one look, Giselle averted her gaze again. Even though she was abroad, she knew about the aftermath between Julius and Alexandra. She knew Julius had grown tired of Alexandra and had dumped her, only to come back and ask her to revoke the divorce agreement. She also knew Julius had seen the divorce papers she left for him and was aware she had left. She also knew about how he had sought out those who had bullied her to settle scores, and how he had searched for her all over the world. As for Julius's eventual change of heart, Giselle felt nothing inside. If Julius had realized and turned back early enough, for instance, before her 99 love letters were torn up, then Giselle might have considered turning back to rekindle their relationship. Yet Julius chose to turn back precisely after she burned all the love letters and completely gave up on him, when he had grown tired of playing with and sleeping with Alexandra. If he hadn't grown tired of sleeping with Alexandra or hadn't seen through Alexandra's true nature, perhaps he wouldn't have turned back, and then continue to force her to wait for him for a lifetime. Thus, Giselle felt nothing but disgust. In Giselle's heart, the Julius who loved her had already died on the day he cheated. The Julius of today is just a stranger. No matter what he does now, she won't let him find her, nor will she ever look back. With this thought, she picked up the remote and turned off the TV, then headed towards the study. She had been feeling a bit under the weather lately, so she was working from home. As soon as I turned on the computer, messages in the group chat started popping up rapidly. The pinned message at the top read, "Mr. Lin, the Hill family's CEO wants to acquire your gallery in the country." The moment she saw this message, Giselle frowned. That gallery was the only business left behind by her mother after her passing. It was her only solace in missing her mother. Now Julius couldn't find her and was resorting to such methods to force her out. Unfortunately, before her mother passed away, she had told her that if anyone ever threatened her with the gallery in the future, she should not concern herself with it, as the gallery was merely a worldly possession, and her safety was the priority, so she would not appear. Thinking of this, she tapped out a few words on the keyboard, then let him take it. Since she had already taken all the relics her mother left in the gallery abroad, the gallery was now just an empty shell. Moreover, Giselle would never return to the country, so she didn't care who acquired the gallery. After replying, Giselle exited the chat page again and returned to her work. Meanwhile, back in the country, when Julius received the gallery's response, he slammed his phone onto the desk in frustration. Using the acquisition of the gallery to force Giselle to show herself was actually Julius's last resort. Ever since Giselle left, he had nearly gone mad. Without her at home, he couldn't eat or sleep well. Without her at the company, he felt extremely restless all day long. And this was just the beginning. If it continued long-term, Julius didn't know how he would survive. But Julius never expected that Giselle would rather give up even Giselle's mom's business just to avoid seeing him. Is she really that heartless? He had clearly told Giselle that he was just having fun with Alexandra, and once the novelty wore off, he would immediately return to his family. Julius believed he was already much better than others in their circle. Others kept several mistresses even before marriage, and after getting married, they rarely came home for long periods. And it took a full 5 years of marriage before he took in a canary out of interest. Moreover, he wasn't as heartless as other men who never came home. Clearly Giselle had agreed to it at first. So why did it suddenly turn out like this? Julius was extremely agitated, and at that moment, his assistant knocked and entered. "Mr. Julius, should we proceed with acquiring the gallery owned by the madam's mother?" Julius opened his eyes and looked at the assistant before him, countering, Didn't you see how her people responded? The assistant's expression changed slightly as he hurriedly said, I'll go prepare the acquisition contract immediately. On the day of acquiring Giselle's mom's gallery, Julius arrived at the gallery early. Although the gallery staff had told Julius that Giselle wouldn't return for today's acquisition, he still held on to a sliver of hope. What if, just what if, Giselle did come? After all, this was her mother's lifelong work. She loved her mother so much. How could she not come? Julius thought this way and waited this way for Giselle. Finally, the sound of footsteps approached from afar, and Julius quickly straightened up, looking eagerly toward the open door. At long last, Julius saw a figure in white slowly enter. He quickly stood up to look at the newcomer, but the name, Giselle, caught in his throat before he could utter it. Uncle, why is it you? Where is Giselle? The person who entered was none other than Giselle's father. Giselle's dad stared coldly at Julius and said, I have nothing to say about her whereabouts. But since you want to acquire my wife's gallery, why wouldn't I come? Julius slightly opened his mouth. But you're not. In Julius's memory, ever since Giselle's dad lost his wife and remarried, Giselle had angrily moved to the country and refused to let Giselle's dad interfere in her affairs, especially those related to Giselle's mom. Why did you suddenly return to the country to interfere with Giselle's mom's affairs? Does Giselle know about this? Giselle's dad did not answer Julius's question and walked straight into the room, sitting down in front of him. Today is about discussing the acquisition. Why bother asking about other irrelevant matters? Giselle's dad had just sat down in front of Julius when an invisible pressure filled the entire room, making even Julius feel somewhat breathless. But uncle, I'm not here today for the acquisition. I just want to see Giselle once. There's a misunderstanding between us, and I need to clarify it with her. Although Julius didn't know the current state of the relationship between Giselle's dad and Giselle, Giselle's dad was now the only person who could contact Giselle. So he honestly stated his original purpose, hoping Giselle's dad would relay his words to her. What if Giselle changed her mind because of it? To his surprise, as soon as Julius finished speaking, Giselle's dad let out a cold scoff. Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? Was it that you didn't keep a canary? Or that you didn't cheat? Didn't make her wait for you to change your mind? Or that you didn't hurt her and trick her into signing the divorce papers? Julius, when we married our daughter to you back then, you promised in front of us that you would never mistreat or betray her in this lifetime. But look what you've done. Back then, Giselle's mom was seriously ill and wanted to see her daughter married before she died. So Giselle's dad carefully selected Julius after much consideration. Later, he and Giselle had a falling out over his new wife, but he still kept a close eye on their daughter. So he had also heard about Julius's affairs. I don't deny these things, but I promised Giselle that I would return to the family once I got tired of playing around. However, she went behind my back and filed for divorce without saying a word. I was completely unaware and did not agree to it. So I hope you can relay a message to her, asking her to come back and remarry me. Giselle's dad listened to Julius's words, his expression darkening, and his voice finally tinged with anger. Dream on. We made it clear to you before marriage that we wouldn't tolerate any form of infidelity. Yet you not only cheated but repeatedly deceived and hurt her for some mistress outside. How dare you have the nerve to ask her to come back and remarry you? And clearly, you're the one at fault. Yet I've seen no remorse from you. Instead, you've blamed my daughter for your mistakes. What a joke. Let me tell you, don't even think about getting back together with her in this lifetime. But I've already ended things with the canary and returned to the family. Why won't you give me another chance? Besides, she clearly loved me so much. What if she still has feelings for me? You can't just tear us apart like this. Julius spoke with utter resentment. He had only made the mistake every man makes. And now that he'd ended it, why were they sentencing him to life without parole? Giselle's dad was almost amused by Julius's words. Your so-called ending things with the canary is just you growing tired of her first. If you never grew tired, would you have expected my daughter to remain a widow for life? Moreover, after marrying my daughter, you should know her intolerance for betrayal. Back then, I married a simple man out of loneliness and gave all my assets to Giselle. But look, she hasn't spoken a word to me all these years, and that was after I lost my wife. Now look at you. How could you possibly think she still loves you? If she truly did, she wouldn't have left. Julius, stop deluding yourself. Forget about this gallery too. Go home, and don't ever hope to find her again. She won't see you. After speaking, Giselle's dad picked up his teacup in a gesture of dismissal. While the bodyguard at the door, Giselle's dad stepped in and said, "Mr. Julius, please leave." Boom. The gallery door slammed shut in front of Julius, and the pouring rain drenched Julius completely, sending a chill from his back throughout his entire body. Yet it still couldn't extinguish his determination to find Giselle. Now that Giselle's dad has returned to the country, it's also good news for Julius, as it means he has one more avenue to find Giselle. With this thought, he took a deep look at the gallery before him, then turned and disappeared into the curtain of rain. Unbeknownst to him, behind the second-floor glass window, Giselle's dad was watching Julius's retreating figure until it vanished from sight, only then withdrawing his gaze to instruct the butler beside him. "Call Mr. Hill and tell him not to let his grandson go abroad, so as not to upset Giselle." The butler quickly acknowledged, and after the butler left, Giselle's dad sat back down on the sofa, taking out a photo of Giselle's mom from his pocket, gently stroking Giselle's mom's smiling face in the picture. "Giselle, don't worry. With me here, I won't let him continue to bully our daughter. I'll make everyone who has wronged you and our daughter pay the price." After Giselle's mom passed away from illness, Giselle's dad was overwhelmed with grief and even gave up on himself, unable to bear seeing his son continue to deteriorate. Old Master Lin took matters into his own hands and arranged for him to remarry, even going so far as to drug him and send him into the new wife's room. Although he stopped the situation in time and sent the new wife far away, his daughter still flew into a rage at him and even cut off all contact with him. And so it was. Giselle's dad had no news of his daughter for a full 5 years. This also meant he couldn't return immediately when his daughter and wife were bullied. It wasn't until this time, when the daughter's servant secretly informed him that she was going to sell her mother's gallery, Giselle's dad finally rushed back without hesitation. The daughter selling the gallery was permitted by her late mother, but because she couldn't return home to avoid Julius, she had no choice but to sell the gallery to him. But Giselle's dad didn't want his daughter to regret it later, so he stepped in to stop it while also teaching Julius a lesson. In the distance, the butler watched the silently distressed master and ultimately decided to make a call to the young lady abroad. Truth be told, the master was the most innocent party in that incident back then, even after all he did later, driving away his new wife and getting a divorce. The young lady still held a grudge and refused to communicate much with him. Now that the master is getting older, they should cherish every day they can spend together to avoid future regrets. And surely the lady in heaven wouldn't want the father and daughter to continue like this. But when the butler called, Giselle on the other end remained silent for several long minutes. The silence lasted so long that the butler thought Giselle had hung up. Before she finally spoke, "I understand." Then Giselle hung up the phone. Miss, the Hill family. Julius had no idea what Giselle's dad was planning to do to him. His mind was consumed by a single thought: to find Giselle, while sending people to deliver various compensatory gifts to Giselle's dad. He even ordered the renovation of Giselle's mom's tombstone from years ago. Yet every single one was returned untouched. Julius didn't care and just kept sending gifts. Meanwhile, the people he sent abroad to Giselle's family were driven back, unable to even leave the country. "What did you say?" When Julius heard once again that his people were restricted from traveling abroad, he could no longer sit still. When he was kicked out by Giselle's dad, he suddenly thought of something. Although he didn't know whether Giselle had forgiven him or not, Giselle's dad's return to the country must have had her tacit approval. Otherwise, Giselle would have made a scene long ago, which means Giselle is abroad. And there's only one place overseas he hasn't searched. The place he thought she would never return to: Giselle's family. At first, Julius was reluctant to confirm it, but after his men were repeatedly turned away, he finally realized Giselle was indeed at Giselle's family. With this thought, he hurriedly headed out, instructing his assistant to book a flight ticket along the way. But before Julius could get far, a sharp shout suddenly rang out behind him. "Stop!" Julius turned around and saw Mr. Hill standing at the bottom of the stairs. "If you're thinking of going abroad to find Giselle, forget it, Grandpa." Julius felt his heart tighten as he took a few steps back. Why? A year ago, Old Man Hill went abroad temporarily for health reasons to recuperate. Little did he expect that in just 1 year, his grandson would stir up such a major incident. At first, Old Man Hill also tried to advise Julius, but he was so infatuated with Alexandra that he simply wouldn't listen. Now that she's gone, he finally realizes his mistake. But it's already too late. Old Man Hill leaned on his cane, staring at him, and retorted, "What do you think?" Julius clenched his fists. I know I'm largely at fault in this matter, but I just have to make it clear to her. She got divorced without even getting my consent. Did you get her consent before having an affair? Of course. Julius stopped mid-sentence as distant memories suddenly surfaced in his mind. When he first proposed Giselle the idea of keeping her as a mistress, Giselle was devastated. She even suggested divorce. But Julius not only refused, he assured her it was just a passing fancy and he'd return once the novelty wore off. Gradually, Giselle stopped mentioning the matter, and he thought she had accepted it. But later Giselle's series of actions clearly told him she didn't agree. She just gave up and left you. Hill the old man watched the changing expressions on his face and slowly added for him. Julius, I told you long ago not to let her down. Now this outcome is entirely your own doing. From now on, you're on your own. Don't expect her to come back. After speaking, Hill the old man turned to the butler beside him. Keep an eye on him, and don't let him cause any more trouble for me. Yes, sir. Julius remained silent, merely dragging his heavy steps toward his room. He didn't emerge again for several days. In the following days, Giselle's mom's gallery remained quiet, and the annoying figure no longer appeared on the gravel path outside. Giselle's dad felt a temporary sense of relief. He hadn't returned in nearly 5 years and hadn't spent much time with his wife for a long time. So Giselle's dad decided to retire domestically, leaving all overseas matters to Giselle. Soon, Giselle's dad celebrated his first birthday abroad, but Giselle still didn't return to accompany him, only sending a birthday gift she had prepared from overseas. Even so, Giselle's dad was deeply moved. Compared to Giselle's previous distance and indifference, this was already a significant improvement. Abroad, when Giselle read Giselle's dad's text expressing gratitude for her and his fondness for the gift, Giselle remained lost in thought for a long time, allowing complex emotions to slowly engulf her entirely. In truth, she had forgiven Giselle's dad long ago. After all, in that incident back then, Giselle's dad was entirely the victim. It was just that she, standing completely from her mother's perspective, felt he had betrayed her mother, which was why she so resolutely severed ties with him. Later, after experiencing a failed marriage herself and witnessing all sorts of people and events, she gradually came to understand Giselle's dad's predicament. The damage has already been done. And even if Giselle wants to make amends, she doesn't know where to begin, so she could only take it step by step. At the very least, as the butler said, she wouldn't regret it in the future. Just then, her phone vibrated in her hand, startling Giselle back to reality. When she saw the caller ID showing, Dad. After hesitating for a long time, Giselle finally answered the call. Giselle, thank you for the gift. Dad really likes it. It turned out to be Giselle's dad, who saw Giselle hadn't replied to the text for a long time. Thinking she might have missed it and fearing his daughter would get upset, Giselle's dad hurriedly gave her a call. Giselle hadn't expected her father to care so much about her feelings. Her nose tingled with emotion as she took a deep breath. As long as you like it, Dad. I'll give you more gifts in the future. Like a key unlocking the misunderstanding between father and daughter. Their conversation gradually became more lively. But just at that moment, Giselle suddenly heard a frantic yet familiar voice coming from the other end of the phone. Uncle, please let me see Giselle just once. I've already realized my mistake. Stop right there. You brat. What do you think you're doing? After the chaos subsided, Giselle learned from Giselle's dad that after Giselle's dad and old man Hill repeatedly scolded Julius, Julius seemed to finally recognize his mistake and wanted to talk things out with her. But Giselle's dad had always been unwilling to let his daughter suffer secondary harm. So he repeatedly refused. Unexpectedly, Julius chased after him all the way to Giselle's dad's birthday banquet. In the distance, Hill's apologies and Julius's struggles continued to argue noisily over the phone. Giselle looked up at the azure sky outside and said calmly, Dad, give him the phone. I'll have a good talk with him once. Giselle's dad remained silent for a long moment before finally moving the phone away. After a burst of static, an excited voice came through on the other end. Giselle. Julius, what exactly do you want to tell me? Compared to Julius' excitement, Giselle's tone was remarkably calm, so much so that Julius on the other end remained silent for a long time. Giselle, I know keeping a canary was my fault, but why did you leave me without a word, without any warning? And I never agreed to the divorce. You used to love me so much. Why didn't you give me any chance? Why did you sentence me to death like this? Julius, Giselle suddenly interrupted him. I told you. I gave you chances. Those burned love letters. That time capsule. Were they my reminders to you? On the other end of the phone, Julius's breath hitched abruptly, followed by a voice trembling slightly. You mean? Giselle let out a light laugh and continued. When you decided to keep Alexandra as your golden canary, I did initially think of giving up on you. But 5 years of feelings made it impossible for me to walk away so easily. Coincidentally, you had written me 99 love letters, so I decided to give you 99 chances. Every time you hurt me, I burned one letter. Once they were all gone, I would leave you for good. It took you 3 years to give me all 99 love letters, and I thought it would take me at least as long to burn them. Yet, in less than 3 months, only the last 5 remained. And that time you sent me to your archenemy for Alexandra. That was the time you hurt me the most. So, I went to the old house that day and burned the time capsule we buried together during our wedding. The one we said we'd dig up when we were surrounded by grandchildren. The last love letter was when you tricked me into signing the divorce papers. I did accidentally see the plan in your chat, but when you handed me the divorce agreement, I still held on to a sliver of hope. That's why I kept asking you, is this really the villa transfer agreement? You were in such a hurry, so impatient, even with a hint of annoyance in your voice, but you never once denied it. The breathing on the other end of the phone gradually became more rapid, and the voice began to mix with pain. Could Giselle just pretend not to hear anything? In this relationship, you always ask me for reasons, but even when I lay the answers right in front of you, you still can't see them. So the root cause of many things is simply that you don't care. That's why he didn't care about her feelings and had the audacity to cheat, letting Alexandra trample on her dignity, allowing her to suffer unnecessary harm again and again. So now you understand why we got divorced. Julius, since we're already divorced, we shouldn't have any further contact. As soon as Giselle finished speaking and was about to hang up, Julius on the other end frantically begged. No, Giselle. You can't do this. Let's meet. Okay. In Giselle's memory, Julius rarely showed such humility, only a few times to coax her, to persuade her not to divorce him. No. Unless it's death. We should never meet again. Beep beep beep. Staring at the abruptly disconnected call and the darkened screen, Julius felt an intense pain spreading from his heart. The agony was like a venomous vine, binding his entire body and rendering him immobile, leaving him utterly consumed by the torment. He tried to move his legs, but the next moment, darkness suddenly engulfed his vision as his entire body collapsed heavily to the ground. Julius, sir, someone, come quickly. After that phone call, Julius suddenly fell seriously ill, rapidly wasting away. No amount of tonics or medicine could restore his health. Everyone thought he had a terminal illness, but only Julius himself knew it was a sickness of the heart. Before Giselle said those words, he still fantasized that there might be a chance between them. But now what possibility remains? Julius looked at the photo of him and Giselle on his phone and could no longer hold back his tears. Giselle, I'm sorry. A long time later, the door was knocked, and the butler walked in, looking at him. Sir, the car is ready. We can depart at any time. After receiving Julius's permission, the butler hurried in again to assist him as they walked toward the door. Although Giselle had clearly stated on the phone that past matters should be considered over, he, still feeling guilty, wanted to do his best to make amends. The first thing he did was to go to Giselle's mom's gravestone, kowtow 3 times, and sincerely apologize to her. If it weren't for his selfishness, she wouldn't have been disturbed again after death. On the way to the cemetery, Julius leaned back in his seat with his eyes closed, mentally drafting what he would say when he met Giselle's mom. But just then, a blinding white light suddenly shone directly at their car. Bang! With the sound of a sharp brake and a violent crash. In the back seat, Julius was thrown upward by the tremendous impact, his head slamming hard against the roof and the front seat. Shards of glass raining from the sky cut his skin, drawing out streams of blood. The Maybach was sent flying by the collision with the dilapidated van across the road, then crashed heavily to the ground. Countless streams of blood gushed from Julius's body. The hand of death began reaching out to him. At that moment, Julius didn't feel any pain, only a sense of regret. He hadn't had the chance to say goodbye to Giselle yet. His life flashed before his eyes in an instant. He saw the 22-year-old Giselle in a red dress, telling him she liked him. He also saw the 23-year-old Giselle, dressed in a wedding gown, saying she would marry him. He also saw the 25-year-old Giselle, dressed in black, signing the divorce papers. In the end, it seemed as though fate finally gave Julius a chance, allowing him to return to the day he first met Alexandra. That day, Alexandra, in her daze, mistakenly pricked him with the wrong needle several times, leaving his entire hand bruised, swollen, and purple. How did he do it last time? He actually found her dazed state somewhat adorable, though when Alexandra apologized to him in tears, he simply smiled nonchalantly and said it was fine, to take her time. From then on, he was caught in her whirlpool, making mistake after mistake, never able to turn back. This time, he coldly watched the apologizing Alexandra and sternly said, "Call your supervisor here." Later, the hospital compensated Alexandra with a sum of money before dismissing her. From then on, Alexandra completely vanished from his world. After he finished his 4-drip, a familiar figure approached him and reached out a hand. "Julius, let's go home." Julius looked up at Giselle, who was smiling with loving eyes, and couldn't help but smile too. Then he reached out, took her hand, and stood up, saying, "All right, let's go home." Hand in hand, the two walked toward the distant light until they disappeared from sight. In the real world, lying in a pool of blood, Julius gradually stopped breathing. The screams, the sound of ambulances, and the wail of sirens also faded away from him, until he could hear nothing at all. Julius's death in a car accident reached Giselle's ears, and the bouquet of roses in her hand suddenly fell to the ground. But now, he could even casually throw her mother's keepsake into the sea. On the other end of the phone, Giselle's dad spoke with a grave tone. "The culprit has been caught. It's Alexandra." Alexandra, after being dumped upon uncovering the truth, was left with the apartment and $10 million from Julius, ensuring she and her grandmother would never worry about food or shelter for the rest of their lives. Yet later, Julius exacted a second revenge on her, stripping away all her privileges. At that moment, her grandmother also found out about her affair as the other woman and, in a fit of anger, passed away on the spot. Her grandmother was Alexandra's only emotional pillar. Now that her grandmother was gone, her world completely collapsed. Alexandra blamed all of this on Julius and ultimately ran him over with her car, killing him. Julius died instantly, and Alexandra later committed suicide in prison. After hearing Giselle's dad's words, Giselle stood frozen in place for a long time. Julius's ashes were laid to rest on a day of continuous rain. Giselle stood quietly under a large black umbrella, gazing at the Julius black and white portrait on the tombstone before her. Once Julius asked her when they could meet again, her casual remark, "Unless it's death," turned out to be a prophecy. Julius did indeed die. He died in the first year of his affair, and in the 5th month after their divorce. Originally Giselle's dad didn't want her to come, but Giselle ended up coming anyway. The deceased is to be respected, and he had truly loved her, so she still wanted to see him off on his final journey. After all, they would truly never meet again. She gazed deeply at Julius's tombstone for a long time, then finally turned and slowly walked toward the elderly Hill, who was on the verge of collapsing from grief. "Grandpa, please accept my condolences." Giselle bowed deeply to Hill the elder, losing his most beloved eldest grandson in his later years. The immense grief was Hill the elder simply couldn't bear. Yet, with great effort, he weakly waved his hand at her and silently shook his head. Giselle continued walking out of the cemetery, and in a daze, she seemed to hear Julius calling her name. She instinctively turned her head and saw the 22-year-old Julius waving at her. "Giselle, goodbye." She curled her lips into a smile and murmured, "Julius, goodbye. We'll never meet again."